President Cangiano, Board Chairman Hannon, Head of Senior School of Athletic, Reverend Johnson, faculty, staff, honored guests, family, friends, members of the righteous and beloved English and athletic departments. A special nod to Angela Irvin, retiring after 43 years, and most importantly to you. Most importantly to you, Shady Side graduates in the class of 2015. I'm going to begin by asking you something. I'd like you to take your right hand right now and raise it as high as you can. Now raise it a little higher. Why didn't you do it the first time? Just saying. If the administration was considering somebody from the world of sports today, just how far down did they have to dig to get to me? Let's see. Sidney Crosby, out of season. Palomalu, recently retired. Andrew McCutcheon, 10-game road trip. Good luck tonight against the Braves. So you got me. But at least I got a connection. As Tom said, 27 years ago, in a very questionable decision by the venerable Emerson Johnson, who a short time later decided to leave the academy, could be a correlation, but we won't explore it. I was a teacher and a coach here at Shady Side Academy. My very first job out of the University of Pennsylvania. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Forget about driving distracted, as head of School of Athletics said, this was living blind. Teaching freshman English in the basement of Ellsworth. You hear the laughs from the very few people who know that's now Hunt Hall. In the basement, which no longer exists. Teaching short story or drama in Row Hall, that does still. Walking down the hall, Hillman wasn't here. Coaching soccer and basketball, freshman with a coach named Gene Deal. Charged with molding impressionable minds. I did do one thing right. I limited the damage and left after only 2 years. 25 years later, I have a very different job. I'm a correspondent for ESPN. And I found in my time there that there's really only two things worth covering. The first is living and dying, and the very thin membrane between the two. And the second is the only thing for me that competes with the first, and it's greatness. And on that score, I've been lucky. If you're a sports fan, just consider. Jordan jumper over Russell in Utah for the 6th title. I was there and talked to him afterward. Jeter flip in Oakland in the playoffs. I was there. Tiger miracle chip in, 16. Last time he won the Masters. There. Federer, after winning his last major at Wimbledon. Interviewed him, unfortunately, on live television, patted him on the butt. Shouldn't have done that. Serena and Sharapova, Rory and Mariano, Andrew Luck and Kobe Bryant, Franco and Paterno. I sat down with each. But the real magic of the job isn't the big events or the big names. It's the stories. So today, what I'd like to do, under the blessed brief cloud cover now, for those who have been broiling in the sun, is I'd like to tell you 3 quick stories, mention 2 words, and end with one envelope. It's the envelope that's beneath your seat right now. Don't reach for it yet. We'll get there. Each of the stories starts in the exact same way. It starts with a question. All stories start that way. The first story starts when I was a news reporter in Portland, Oregon. And it begins with the question, what's it like to care for the very youngest patients in the world? And to answer it, we spent 24 hours in a NICU. I hope nobody here knows what that is. A NICU is a neonatal intensive care unit for infants that are born and then placed directly into intensive care. We spent 24 hours there, a day and a night. And in the night there, an infant died, 6 weeks old. He was born with a defective heart condition. He underwent 4 surgeries. But it became clear that he would not thrive and he would not survive. We never filmed the infant. We never spoke to the parents. Instead, we spoke to the doctors and nurses. And each of them grew deeply emotional, of course, about the loss of the baby boy, but about the parents, who they described as unique. These parents, obviously crushed by the loss, understood. They grieved, they accepted, and then they acted. And here's what they did. After it was determined that the baby would not be able to withstand another surgery, they decided that they wanted him to have a short list of experiences. They brought ice cream into the unit, and they placed a dab on his lips and his tongue so that he might taste it. They brought a puppy in so that he might be able to feel the fur between his fingers. They brought a guitar player in so that he might hear a song and know what music is. And then with the blessing of the doctors and nurses, they took him off the constellation of tubes and machines that had defined his life. They took him outside so that he could see the sun in the sky and feel the wind on his skin. What's it like to care for the youngest patients in the world? The second story involves a question about time. What is 26 years? A number of years ago at ESPN for 30 for 30, we did a documentary about an athlete you've likely never heard of. His name is Dewey Bozella. He served 26 years for a murder that he did not commit. At the time of his arrest in the late 70s in Poughkeepsie, New York, he was a promising young boxer. He ended up charged with this crime 6 years after it was committed. And without any physical evidence, and on the testimony of 2 convicted felons, both of whom went free in exchange for their testimony, an African-American defendant before an all-white jury, he was convicted. He got 20 to life. 7 years afterward, after maintaining his innocence, he got a retrial based on having his civil rights violated by the all-white jury. The prosecution, knowing it had problems with the case, came to him with a deal. And they said, Dewey, sign your name, admit guilt, and go free. Walk out if you sign this piece of paper. He didn't do it. He was convicted again. He served 19 more years. Longer, I would guess, than any of you have been on this earth. Inside Sing Sing prison in New York. Inside the prison, he became the light heavyweight champion, the Golden Gloves champion at that time, a prestigious amateur boxing tournament in New York. Sent its champion there, and Dewey beat him. After 26 years, a second-year law associate named Ross Furstenbaum took an interest in his case after the Innocence Project said they couldn't help him because DNA evidence had been destroyed. Furstenbaum, 2 years out of law school, dug in. He interviewed the lead investigator of the case, and he found out that exculpatory evidence had never been presented to the defense. Evidence that would have cleared him. Evidence that clearly pointed to another man who was already in jail for a similar type of murder. When Bozzella got out of prison 26 years later, what did he want most? He wanted one pro fight. He was 50 years old. He had to get cleared. He had to pass a medical exam. He did all those things. And he had his first fight at the Staples Center in Los Angeles on the undercard of a Bernard Hopkins fight, a famous fighter. He was 52 years old. He fought somebody 20 years younger. Dewey Bozzella retired 1-0. He beat the boxer that he fought in his only bout. What is 26 years? The last story also starts with a question, then I'll get to the 2 words in the envelope. Sorry that they're all kind of heavy, but it comes back to that living and dying and that membrane in between. What would you do in the last hour of your life? Probably not going to know when it is. And a man named Wells Crowther didn't know it was his last hour either, but he had an idea. Because on September 11th, 2001, he was working on the 104th floor of the South Tower for Sandler O'Neill as an equities trader. Wells, I imagine, had a lot in common with the students I taught when I was here and with all of you. He was an excellent student. He was devoted to his community. He served in a student group against alcohol and substance abuse. He was a varsity athlete. He went on to play Division I lacrosse at Boston College. And he was a volunteer firefighter. And it was that last role that spoke to him after the second plane hit, after he called his mother to say, "Don't worry, I'm all right," at about 9:05 a.m. He made his way down to the 78th floor sky lobby, where there was a collection of elevators and there were hundreds of people who had been in the process of trying to evacuate. He found a scene of undescribable carnage, scores dead, many dying, many wounded. And Crowther led a group of people down the only functional stairwell, 16 floors, to a group of firefighters who were waiting there. And then he made the decision that defined his life. He turned around, he went back in the stairwell, and he went back up again. The second time he came down, he carried a woman across his back down the 16 flights. And he led a second group. And then he did it again. Crowther was found in March of 2002, his remains were, in a command station that had been set up by the NYFD in their response to the terrorist attacks. 2 months before 9/11, he called his father. Wells was an equities trader. Everything indicated that he was going to have a life of prosperity or fortune. He called his dad and he said, "I'm not sure this is for me. I think I might want to apply to the FDNY." His dad was shocked and stunned. The only reason that anyone knew what Wells Crowther did was because he wore a red bandana across his face to cover his mouth from the smoke and the ash in the 78th floor sky lobby. His dad had given him a red bandana when he was a little boy. He was never without it. And when the New York Times described those moments, they had two witnesses saying, the man that saved me had a red bandana. His mother read that account in the Times, sent a picture of her son to those two survivors, who then called his mom to say, that's the man in the red bandana who saved me. Most days I carry a red bandana, ever since telling the story back in 2011. Is that hokey? Is it sappy? Is it overwrought and melodramatic? That gets me to the envelope. If you would, pick it up and hold it. It has 3 words on it, a simple instruction with 4 syllables. It says, do not open. Be honest. Raise your hand if you opened it. Be proud. Be very, very proud. In the envelope, there are 2 cards. One of the cards has 1 word printed on one side and 1 word printed on the other side. These are not titanic words. They're not war and peace, or love and hate, or light and dark. But they're 2 words that are at the center of the 3 stories I just told you. And here's the thing about the 2 words. They're at conflict right now inside each one of you. When you were born, 1 word dominated. It defined every day. It made every hour a potential miracle. Every next corner a gleaming trail. But then that can fade, and the second word starts. And the second word is insidious and it's sneaky. The first word loves and worships the question. The second word always has an answer. The second word is cool. It's hip. It's loud at the party. It likes to laugh in the back row. It thinks this is pretty hokey. The first word worships the question, and the second word only trades in answers. And here's the truth. You don't know the answers. You don't know. You don't know what tomorrow is, or the next day, or the day after. So, as you get ready to open the envelope, you'll find there's another card in there, and that one is blank. At some point, choose the word that works for you. As I get ready to leave you with a question. Open up your envelope. Whether it's lost tomorrow or travels with you into the fall, there may come a time in the future when you think of the envelope and you think of the 2 words. And in the fight between them, in the conflict between the 2 forces, in the choice between the 2 instincts that are described on that card, in the life divided by those 2 ideas, here's the question I leave you with. What side are you on? When your story is told, will it start with the first word, or will it be sealed by the second one? Congratulations to the class of 2015.